Okay, how y'all doing? Back again. Got another book. Finally got to Uncle Remus, His Songs and Sayings by Chandler Harris. Alright, I've been wanting to read this for a long time. I wanted to get up into folklore, especially black folklore, black American folklore, for a long time, just to see, like, what was it? Something that can tell you about a people is folklore. That's a popular thing to get to the essence of a people. It's not so much their history, not so much like their material culture, even though that does tell you a little bit about them, but their folklore, because this folklore, a lot of theorists believe, is essence of the common people and stuff. Because a lot of times history is written by the elites and stuff. But this is like you will get the actual people, even though at the time during slavery there was free blacks. Then even after slavery and segregation times we had black elites. We also had black elites. But I wanted to get down to the average everyday person. And this actually was not the first or the only collection of black American folk tales and stuff, but it is one of the most popular ones. This guy Chandler Harris, he basically was a newspaper man, and basically his claim of fame was this. This is like actually his first collection. I believe he had 4 more collections after this. And he really became famous, and then off of his stuff, like Bugs Bunny is based on the main character, Brer Rabbit. Brer is just basically dialect for brother. Okay, I'll get into the dialect that he writes in. And also by a English person, I forget her first name, but I believe her name is Anne Beatrix, like Peter the Rabbit, and other things, you know what I'm saying? So after him, he was very influential. A lot of presidents and white America loved this. And all of Europe, white people all over the world loved it. Like I said, Bugs Bunny and Peter the Rabbit from Anne Beatrix and other people have copied him. They basically just ripped him off, but he basically, ripped off black people. But this is not the only collection of black folklore, like I said at the time or later on. This is not the only collection of Brother Rabbit, aka Brer Rabbit, but since this is the one that got the most fame and stuff, I'm just reading it. There's other collections like Henry Gates Jr. He has a big collection now where he talks all the different collections from the 1800s and the early 1900s that have these folk tales about Brother Rabbit, Brother Bear, Brother Fox, They are also out there and stuff. I'm probably gonna get his big omnibus. It's called the Annotated African American Folk Tales and stuff. So that's about 600 pages long and stuff, and it's like a really big encyclopedic looking book. I'm probably going to get to that because it also goes into examination of it. But I wanted to start here since this is the most famous one. The ones before it, I'm probably not going to find. If I do find it, it's probably going to be like in a collection somewhere. But since this is in every public library system, probably around the world, I decided to go with it. I thought it was just going to be folk tales, but hold up. Let me see. Let me go to the after all. Okay, here we go. All right, about 2 pages of stuff. All right, basically you have Legends of the Old Plantation. That's the first section. That's about, how many tales is that? That is about 34. Then if you can look right here, Plantation Proverbs, that's about 2 pages of proverbs and stuff, sayings and stuff about the wisdom. I'll get into that. They were kind of hard to interpret because you have to be in a southern rural context to understand them. I got some of them and stuff, but not all of them. Songs, like it says, these are just hymns, camp meeting, revival hymn, camp meeting hymn, corn shucking song, plow hand song, blah 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 blah, transcription, plantation chant, plantation serenade, blah 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 blah. These are basically like some of them are like church hymnals, but then like also common vernacular secular songs also and stuff. So this is basically like the pop, you know, pop songs of the day. You know, you either have the church or the secular pop songs of the day. You have a story at war. That's a whole nother story dealing with the Civil War. I'll go into that. And then his sayings. But I don't know why they said sayings, because when they said sayings, I thought it would be part of the plantation proverbs and stuff. But no, these are just stories of Uncle Remus after the Civil War when he's like a older man and stuff. So that's kind of the way it is, you know. Then also it has a an introduction by Robert Hemingway. There's an author, teller, hero by Robert Hemingway, if you can see that right there, where he kind of like does a critique of it and stuff. I'll get into his interpretation of Brer Rabbit and the folk tales and stuff. Kind of disagree with him, but that's kind of the intro of it and stuff. Yeah, so let me kind of get into it. Okay, usual, boom, I'm gonna read this, get my thoughts out, then I'm gonna go a little bit more interpretation of it. Basically the setting, you know, the context is basically, it happens during slavery, and basically it is when Joel Chandler Harris is a little kid, and basically he goes to the cabin of a slave called Uncle Remus. Okay, he invented Uncle Remus. Basically, from what the research I've gotten, yeah, he was a kid during slavery, but after the Civil War, when he was on the one of the many Atlanta newspapers and stuff, basically he said that you know, like a certain job he had at a plantation that was still working, basically he met a lot of older former slaves, and they would tell stories and stuff, and he would just kind of sit down and listen to them and stuff. So the Uncle Remus character is kind of a composite of all those guys, but also how can I say, Uncle Remus, well, let me just read off here. Basically, I think Uncle Remus is a stereotype of the happy, contented, darky slave who exists only for the comfort and benefit of his white slave master and family. Basically, he was invented for propaganda to basically to post justify slavery and stuff, because at the same time when he published this in 1880, you know, it was like the end of Reconstruction. So the South was really looking to justify slavery and justify the treatment of blacks. And basically, this is the Uncle Remus character is kind of propaganda and stuff, you know, because he himself did not grow up with slaves. He did not. So that whole thing is a lie. It's not real. And the Uncle Remus character, you know, he said that, hey, didn't happen. The people there at the plantation where he worked at was not, none of them were named Uncle Remus, and they weren't like that, but it was rather obvious he was just basically invented him for the comfort of white people. You know, justify the South, you know, to post-justify slavery and the treatment of blacks. You know what I'm saying? So it was, yeah, I kind of got issues with that, but I'll get into it a little bit later on. No, I'll come back to that. Okay, basically let's get to the meat of it. Basically, Brer Rabbit. Brer Rabbit is just dialect for brother. Okay, but I'll get into the dialect. That's a whole nother kit and caboodle. Basically he's a trickster figure. You know, history I know I've looked up. Basically, the West Africans, there were two main trickster figures. There was Anansi the spider in West Africa, and then more to the eastern part of West Africa, especially like, you know, Eastern Nigeria, Cameroon, on into Central Africa. They had their trickster figure was a rabbit. You know, so basically down in the Caribbean, you have Nancy stories, which is short for Nancy. You know, the spider trickster figure down there. Up here in America, it was the rabbit. So letting you know where it actually came from. So it came from the eastern part of West Africa and more West Central Africa. But that's where it came from. It's kind of survival. Just like in the Caribbean, the spider trickster figure survived. Up here in America, which is more the western part of West Africa, and the eastern part of West Africa and West Central Africa, the rabbit was the trickster figure. So you can look up a Nancy and look up the hare figure. I'll let y'all do that on your own. But in here, you know, Brer Rabbit, well, I don't like him, but let me get into it. Basically, he's a scoundrel. And for me, he's not lovable at all. You know, like I said, Robert Hemingway, in his introduction, as well as other literary critics, has pointed him out as a hero. Well, I disagree. I totally disagree. Basically, when you look at his behavior, you know, he's lazy, he's dishonest, he's immoral, he's a good for nothing character. You know, so my thing is like, how are these traits admirable? You know what I'm saying? You know, one argument is that he used his brain to overcome bigger, more powerful opponents like Brer Fox, Brer Wolf, and Brer Bear and stuff. Because as you know, foxes are small, but these are larger animals. All his encounters with them is Brer Rabbit basically exploiting, conning them, or blame shifting responsibility for something he stole or whatnot. You know, in my opinion, he's not a hero or anti-hero. He's basically good for nothing. Yeah, when you actually meet people like this in real life, so he's not admirable at all. A lot of people try to say, like Robert Hemingway, he says because basically the other bigger animals like Brer Fox, who is it? Brer Fox, Brer Bear, and Brer Wolf, that they symbolize the slave master, okay? The master, and Brer Rabbit symbolizes the slave. And basically it's because the slave master has all the rights in society and the slave doesn't, you have to use your brain to outwit them. And that's what it's basically, that's his and other people's theory on it. Yeah, I can see, but I don't know. Like I said, you know, when you meet people like this in real, I know with stories you're supposed to have a suspension of disbelief, but this kind of goes too. I mean, like if he had been, say, because they're bigger animals, if you had shown them bullying him and him using his brains to stand up for himself, that would have been more believable as far as representing basically rebelling against a slave, rebelling against its master. But this thing, you know, for me, myself, and that's why I want to read more Black American folklore, because there is a series of tales. I found a book. I'm going to read it, called John and Old Master. Basically, that is an actual slave who basically does constantly outwit the master. He basically does stuff to save himself. Like when he gets into trouble, he uses his mind to get out of trouble, or to please the master and stuff when he messes up to cover up for his stuff, and just basically cons him all the time and stuff. I've read a couple of John and Old Master folk tales and stuff. I'm really going to get into that as a counter to Brer Rabbit, because I like him more because it's a literal slave instead of a symbolic thing with animals and stuff. It's a literal slave getting the best of the master and stuff. So I think that's more admirable, but I can understand how basically they are disguising the slaves' rebellion and stuff, because basically slaves went against the master in very different ways. You have some slaves who had revolts, right? That's one way. You have some slaves who ran away, but then also you have some slaves that would, kind of like a union leader, get with all the slaves and purposely slow down the work and stuff. Also, they would purposely break equipment and stuff. I did not know that. I did research into it, but yeah, that's what they would do. So there were various other ways that slaves resisted slavery, and that's why I like John and Old Master, because that's more direct. But at the time, if I could see how blacks use that to hide their feeling about the master, because if you were saying, John and Old Master, if you just had a slave purposely disrespecting his master, he'd probably kill you or whip you. So I get them hiding it. You know what I'm saying? But it probably would have been better if it would have been like these bigger animals bullied him and he stood up to them. That would have been better. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like like for example, like capoeira in Brazil, right? Capoeira is actually a martial art that goes back to West Africa, but the slaves in Brazil, they disguised it as a dance. You know what I'm saying? So they would be practicing martial arts skills right in front of the master and other white people right there in Brazil, but they disguise it as a dance. And basically, and there's history of, because it's still down there today, it's still a martial art, and they still do pretend to dance and stuff, but you can actually hurt somebody with capoeira. If you've seen the movies or you've seen stuff on YouTube, you can actually kick somebody's ass. It's a martial art. And there is proof that, yes, it was used in various slave revolts down there in Brazil. Like you have Palumbo. That was something that they used. They used capoeira in Palumbo when they had a rebellion down there in Brazil, and they actually were a maroon. Maroons is a maroon country. Maroons is when slaves escape and they go off into the woods somewhere and have their own community. And Palumbo was one of many maroonage societies in Brazil. We also have maroonage up here in America, but they don't tell you that and stuff. You got to look it up and stuff, just like they hide all the slave rebellions and stuff. But anyway, Palumbo was a maroon kingdom that lasted in the woods of the Amazon from 1610 to 1694. I believe it had 3 leaders and stuff. So that, trying to compare like a rebellion, that's more of a rebellion than what he does there. I mean, like having some piece of crap good for nothing fool people, I don't think that's a good representation of, a slave getting the better of and resisting the master. So I think it would have been better, and hopefully somebody can come up and rewrite it, Brer Rabbit that way, with him getting bullied and him standing up for himself. So yeah, that's just my opinion on that. Moving on and stuff. Plantation proverbs. These are just maxims and aphorisms of life in a rural environment, like I've explained earlier, other times. Let me go up in here and get to them. It's kind of hard to read them because it's in dialect, but I'll get to the dialect later on. So I like plantation proverbs. Let me read some and stuff, because this is like folk wisdom. This is like proverbs from the Bible or Ecclesiastes or any other little old maxims that we know and stuff. But it's kind of hard. Like the first one says, big possum climb little tree. I don't know what they're talking about. Them what eats can say grace. Yeah, I know the dialect is horrible, but them what eats can say grace. Kind of don't know what they were talking about. Old man, know all died last year. I kind of know that because that's kind of an African proverb. What's African proverb? Where, because it was an oral society, and so things were passed down orally. So every time like a leader that had knowledge, whatever, like the history of the kingdom or skills like blacksmithing and stuff, these, when the elder teachers died, they would say it would be the equivalent of losing a library. So that's what it kind of goes to. In oral societies, information is passed on orally and talked to people face to face and stuff. So that's what they're talking about. So basically, kind of respect the old people because they're leaders and the teachers because they have knowledge and stuff. Better they gravy than no grease at all. Kind of hard. I think it's saying take whatever you can get, because if you don't take this low gravy instead of getting like the meat, then you won't eat. Oh, here goes a good one. Lazy folks' stomachs don't get tired. Basically, don't be spoiling people. Make people work to earn theirs. You know what I'm saying? If you feed a lazy person who doesn't put any work to earn that food, they're going to keep coming back. You know what I'm saying? They're basically leeches, and other stuff. It's kind of hard to really figure it out. I guess you got to be living in the rural country in the South during the 1800s to figure out. But I'll let folklorists look this up and find out about stuff. Let them go. Oh yes, before I forget, yes, some of the tales up in here are familiar, but one of the ones that I did not know was the rabbit and when the turtle race each other. And here it's called a terrapin. Terrapins are just like big turtles. Turns out that story was different than what's up there. And there it's basically they have a race. The rabbit's fast. He gets cocky. He goes to sleep, but the turtle keeps walking on and eventually wins the race while the rabbit's sleeping. So it's saying, be determined. If you're determined to stay your goal, you'll win out. And here, the turtle cheats. Okay, the turtle, it turns out, has a whole family, and the turtles all look alike. So they take advantage of that. So he gets with his family and tells them, hey, I have a race with the rabbit. You go and be at this point in the race, along the race route right here. You be at this point of the race route. You be at this point of the race route, and I'll be at the end. So basically, when the rabbit is running, he doesn't take a break. When the rabbit is running, every time he runs, all of a sudden, boom, he comes across a turtle right there. But he can't tell the difference between the turtle he's racing and the turtle's family members, right? So then when he finally gets to the end, the turtle that he was supposed to race is there because he already walked there from like the morning time or the day before, whenever, and wins the race. So he wins the race by deception. By deception. I did not know that. That blew my mind. Okay, that kind of seemed like they turned the tables on the rabbit. The rabbit is using deception all the whole time, but yet the turtle uses deception on him. So that's kind of good. That's why you got to read this stuff to really see, because they basically turn stuff around and exploit it and whatnot, and don't give you how it goes down in real life. Like give an example, like, I'm just gonna stop right here and talk about, of course, everyone knows the Song of the South. That's the Disney movie that was released in 1939. It was like Technicolor, one of the first Technicolor movies. And it uses several of these stories, like of all these stories, another one that's famous is Tar Baby. It talks about that. And it shows Uncle Remus in there. I haven't seen the movie. I've seen it online. They've actually suppressed it, but there is a thing online. I'll probably watch that eventually. I have it saved up. Before the clips I've seen, they really see. I want to kind of save it, but I'm just going to say it right now. I'm going out of order of my notes, but that movie was so racist. I see why they suppressed it, because basically he's the old darky that's really happy and stuff, and then the characters. No, let me just keep going, because let me just express my anger at the end. Okay. Like I said, going to the songs, they go further in depth into rural life. They talk about, like half of them are church hymnals, other half are like popular pop songs. And basically they just talk about rural life and farming and taking care of nature. And I can't really say I really like that part. You know what I'm saying? It's not as complex because a lot of stuff is repetitive. But yeah, basically, give yourself to God and stuff with the hymnals and try to do good with your neighbors and stuff. Can't really expand on it. The story of war section, that, once again, it was kind of hard to really read it because of the dialect. I'll get into the dialect, it was hard. But basically, Uncle Remus is talking about his post, like right after the Civil War, and basically, Uncle Remus he's like the mouthpiece for white people. Kind of like how conservatives are now for racist white conservatives and stuff. And he basically puts forth the whole ideology of like the lost cause, like, the South was just fighting the war and stuff. And they got betrayed somehow, and they'll win in the end and stuff. And Uncle Remus basically goes around how he doesn't like the northern troops have occupied our land and stuff, and I'd rather stay here with my people in the South. Y'all are good people. And that's all it is. It's basically propaganda. His sayings, okay, like these are just sketches of Uncle Remus interacting with like local people of the town. Some explain what was going on in this rural environment, which, sorry, can't read my writing. How the songs went further, basically they went further in depth, just like the songs went further in depth to environment. The sayings were basically stories that went further into depth of the environment. Basically, it was rather obvious, that Uncle Remus at points was the black face for the white voice. Parroting points about, like, say, education and how basically it's wasted on blacks. You know what I'm saying? Putting down, saying they're inferior. Why are you going to waste time educating them? It's not going to help. They're inferior. And the South being more morally just than the North. It really puts forth that, saying that the South has more morals than the North. And we're good people. They're not bad people. And we weren't bothering them. They should have left us alone and stuff. And even the stories like where he's not interacting with white people and basically kissing their ass, when he's interacting with black people, he's pretty much putting forth the white opinion of like, let's stay Christian, let's stay Baptist, because Baptist denomination started in the South. He's basically the voice for, the white Southern lost cause. Let me get to dialect, because that, I kind of saved it for last. Basically, the dialect is barely readable. Okay, the method of reading dialect out loud hardly helped me, because I would be in the library and I would try to read it out loud in order to understand it. It hardly helped me. I had to look up online to find out what was being said. Like there was one thing he kept on saying, a phrase he kept saying, bimini, Bimeby, bimini. I was like, what the hell is bimini? And I had to look it up, and basically he was trying to say by and by. I had to look up like another one that says Sezee, Seezee. I looked up, it said he was actually trying to say says he, Sayshe. Like he was trying to say he said, or Uncle Remus said, or the Master John said. Instead of just saying that, he put this dialect and other phrases that were repetitive and some that weren't repetitive. I really didn't like it. Could barely get through it. And my problem was this, by using a barely understandable dialect was a form of showing the slaves to be inferior. Whereas Harris, when he was, and other whites' speech was very understandable. He used modern American standard English when they were talking and stuff. Basically, by him doing this, by having the slaves and even free blacks talking this dialect during slavery and even after slavery. He even had a preacher who came out of seminary. Seminary is college for preachers. You have to be able to read. He even spoke in this barely understandable dialect. So by him having, the blacks, whether they were former slaves or college educated black people, speaking this dialect and having the whites speaking modern standard American English, basically creating a contrast of superiority where whites are at top and blacks are. Like I said, I went into it to try to find, a kind of, a culture, like cultural history of black people. And I soon found out that this is basically white co-optation. Okay, not only was it him stealing the folk tales from these blacks on the plantation where he went to go do a story and stuff, and him putting it into a book form and becoming mad rich. I mean, like, he went to the White House, he went on tour to Europe. He became really famous and rich by basically stealing these folk tales from former black slaves. But he not only did that, but he also he basically reinforced the racism against black people. Pretty much. That's what he did. He did it by, using dialect. Whether the black person was a slave during slavery or they was a slave that was a preacher who was college educated, who came out of seminary. Literally one of the things he says, okay, this new preacher just came out of seminary. This black preacher just came out of seminary. And have the white folks speaking modern English that you can understand. I mean, like, you can barely understand. I ain't gonna lie. I did not know what was happening about 50% of the time because of the fucking dialect. And also him using Uncle Remus as a black face with a white voice in order to put forth the South's form of racism, to justify their form of white supremacy and to justify them fighting the Civil War. He basically just co-opted black people and the fairy tales to basically, sustain white supremacy. And I really don't like that. I really don't like that. That is not something I didn't like, but you have that. Look at rock and roll. Rock and roll was with black people that came out of blues. But as soon as a white person, Elvis, got good at it, boom. He made millions more dollars than the blacks. Same thing with rap. Look at rap. White rappers sell more than black rappers. Like right now, they're talking about Eminem. He's been around for about 20-something years, and they're saying he's the best rapper ever. Fuck up out of here. That's Rakim. Rakim, he's known as one of the best if not the best rapper ever, but he did not sell nowhere near the numbers of Eminem. Okay? And then also, the record labels are owned by white people. So that type of exploitation of blacks and black culture and stuff financially by white people is nothing new. It goes back to Uncle Remus and his sayings, And then this wasn't even a real black person. He admits how he invented him and stuff, But instead of him like being white supremacy, all like pan white supremacy or American white supremacy, he goes for Southern white supremacy. Because I mean, like, just reading just reading what Uncle Remus says and how stuff comes out of his mouth, it sounds just like how nowadays you have black conservative pundits who basically spit out anti-black racism for the Republican Party and stuff. That's what it sounded like to me, except for Southern and 1800s. That's what it sounded like to me. You know what I'm saying? But instead of like a real black person doing it on TV, it's this imaginary black person in a fake setting, that didn't even happen and stuff. So yes, that kind of overclouds my feelings on the book. You know what I'm saying? Just apart from the fact that I did not, the whole notion of him, Brer Rabbit, being this rebel character, just did not like it. Just did not like it. But hey, I wanted to get something to, kind of get a cultural history of the Black American. There are actually collections of where they retell the Brer Rabbit story. Like Julius Lester, he has a thing that I'm going to get. It's in the library where he retells the story, but he takes out the dialect. Okay, so you can understand it. I was going to read it, but I probably will read it and come back to you and probably do a comparison, with this, so I can really understand the tales and stuff. Because like I said, I did not know what was going on half the time because the dialect was just. That's why I don't like dialect. I don't like dialect reading. Just do it in American Standard English and stuff. Yeah, dialect basically is a way to make people look stupid and to make people look inferior. Yeah, kind of just don't like it. But like I said, I'm gonna get Julius Lester. Try to do it that way. Another guy that does that is Charles Chestnut. Charles Chestnut was a octoroon, but he was labeled black. Even though pictures of him, he looks not only white, he looks Scandinavian white. Like I said, he had one black relative, like a great grandparent or something. So he's an octoroon, so he's only 1/8 white, but he was classified as black. He has another called Uncle Julius, which is his version of Uncle Remus. And I've read a story or two about him, and he talks about black people in his stories, their characters. And he also uses dialect, which is very much in the same vein as this guy, which I can barely read. He's a good writer, but you don't have to. Yeah, he was labeled black just because he was 1/8 black, but he basically upheld the same racist stereotype. I want to read him because his stuff he uses a lot of black folklore and stuff, but also what's his name, Paul Dunbar. He's known for using dialect in his poems. I read a couple of his poems. It's a little bit easier to read. It's not as thick. He doesn't have a thick accent. He's good, but I kind of didn't like that neither. So yeah, dialect I don't like. And kind of trying to go to the folklore to get an honest representation of black folks, I ran into white supremacy racism. Yeah. So, and then reading up on collections of folklore, a lot of times not only did they write in this thick dialect to make the teller kind of damn near non-intelligible, a lot of these white people who collected the folk tales often edited them. They didn't put it out the way that the black people told them. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times you got to go to the notes of them to get the real, true tale. You know what I'm saying? So my research it just really led me to a lot of racism. So basically, the only collection was probably of the Hampton Institute. They had something called the Southern Workman. They collected a lot of folk tales, so I got to read that. That's up in the whole omnibus of Henry Louis Gates, the annotated African American folklore. I got to read that. If I could just get the whole Workman, if I find the Workman, Southern Workman from Hampton University, their collection, hopefully I will get the true unedited, white edited versions of the tales. But it's kind of hard. Like I said, there's various collections of old John and Old Master, but a lot of times those are told in dialect. Like there's a name called Dorson. He collected a lot of black folklore, but it also is in dialect, so that's kind of hard. Um, yeah, that's kind of really disappointing. I thought I was going to get authentic black slave and post Civil War culture. Instead, I ran into a lot of white supremacy and bigotry. So that's kind of disappointing. But hey, that's the way it is. But also at the same time, yes, yeah, you do have a lot of, you do have a spirit of rebellion there. I can say I don't agree with their theory and stuff. Like I said, John and Old Master, that goes more along the lines of rebelling against, the slave rebelling against the master, and stuff. But yeah, hey, I finally got it done. Finally got like some idea of the culture. I want to read other stuff by different people. Like there's a guy named Genevieve and Levine. They have these two books, really big, that go into a examination of the folk culture and try to interpret it like black culture back then for slavery and post Civil War. I'm gonna read that and see how that goes. Once again, these are white people interpreting, black culture. So I really haven't really found a black American interpreting the folk culture. Like I said, I've only found the Southern Workman from Hampton University. Let me see if their collection of folk tales, if I get a real unedited, true, authentic version. So looks kind of bleak to get a real authentic something through the black American lens. That's what I was really looking for. Black culture through the black American lens. It's very hard to get it because the slaves, all they had was their tales. That's what they kept on telling. I'm thinking about basically going and getting slave narratives. I know I can find a lot of those, like not only Frederick Douglass or like Sojourner Truth, but there's tons of collections, other than that, or the movie 12 Years a Slave. There are a lot of collections of that. Probably have to take that a grain of salt, just like I take this with a grain of salt, because a lot of those slave narratives and collection of slave narratives, yeah, they were collected by white people also, and of course edited and also written in a dialect. Looks like the only one that I know of that was actually probably is more truthful is Frederick Douglass, because I know he wrote 3 slave narrative autobiographies. So maybe if I get to that, I know there are collections where it's omnibus collections of all his 3 autobiographies, where he got more power later on. Maybe I'll get a true authentic voice from there. I know Dover, they have a lot of slave narratives, slave autobiographies, and stuff. I came across they do have a couple collections, a lot of them are like the Works Progress Program, 1930s, but these were slaves that were slaves. By the time they were free, they were like 3, 5, 6, 8 years old, so they really hadn't grown up there, and they're like 70 or 80 something years old in the 1930s, basically like 60 years later. So they're old people and they were kids, so they can't really trust that. I do know that there were several collections of slaves. There was one collection of slaves that came out in 1850s and stuff. I know Dover has that. And that collection inspired Uncle Tom's Cabin. I know where that's at. Hopefully that'll be real, but I do know that a white person edited that. Yeah, it's real frustrating, because I want to get the raw feeling of what black slaves went through, and then what black slaves went through during Reconstruction and segregation during the South. But I keep on meeting white people who interpreted and edited it away. You know what I'm saying? And then even when you do have collections like from Genevieve and Levine, or Levine, whatever the hell, these are white people, looking at stuff and interpreting it. I know a lot of people say go look at Zora Neale Hurston, but at the same time, Zora Neale Hurston, she was taught by Franz Boas, a white guy, and she was still published by white people. You know, so her stuff was edited by white people. So how authentic is that? Is that real, or do I have to take that with a grain of salt? Yeah, I'm really frustrated. I really tried to get to the real authentic experience of black folks, not just what some white person wrote about it, what they have in their own tales. Instead, I'm getting more white people as being the gatekeeper of our culture and our inheritance. But like I said, back then during slavery, couldn't read and write. They actually had laws against black people reading and writing. Even during segregation and post-Reconstruction, black folks were not given the same funding for their schools. By 1890, the black literacy rate had raised up real high, but the quality of the education was real low. So you don't, like I said, you don't have too many authentic, like I said, you know, you have the Hampton Southern Workman University collecting stuff in the 1890s, 30 years after slavery. You have the Fisk Jubilee Singers who went around in 1870 singing, you know, old slave hymnals. I want to get to that. But those two things, those were the only black done folk material collected. Even with the Jubilee Singers, they basically performed to white people. So even with that, they're catering to white people. They're giving a presentation that towards white people to please them in order to get money to go back to Fisk to keep the university going, which was already founded by white people and was run, you know, a lot of the HBCUs back in the day, they were run by white people. You didn't have a black person as a president of the university till the early 1900s, and even then it was usually like someone who was mixed or quadroon or octoroon who grew up amongst white people up north, you know. So yeah, I'm really seeing how the output of black people mediated by white people, you know, our education, our folklore, the music, everything. Yeah. So that's kind of disappointing. I know I'm kind of went off the rails with this, kind of expressing my anger, but like I said, I was trying to get the authentic, unedited, raw experience of black folks, and I'm not. I'm getting white gatekeeping. But hey, if you don't stop me, you know, from my disappointment from this. Like I said, I'm going to keep on. I'm going to read Julius Lester's retelling of the Brer Rabbit tale, so I can understand what the hell's going on. There are there John and Old Master collections out there. I'm going to get and read that. There's modern day. There's a few, like I said. Henry Louis Gates, you know, the annotated African American folk tales. I'm gonna try to read that, even though it's like 700 pages long, big like encyclopedia. Are there other collections I know that were done? Like I said, the Southern Workman. If I can get the full copy of that, whatever. And there are tons of modern day. I'm trying to read Zora Neale Hurston's, you know, Mules and Men and other stuff that she wrote, that she collected. And then during the 1960s and 70s and 80s, there was a lot of collecting of old black folklore, like Daryl Cumber Dance. She has a lot of collections. Yeah, there's a lot of different collections. Even though those collections that started in the 1960s, not too many of them collected the rural stuff. Some of them did, but it was combined with urban. A lot of those collections concentrated on black folks' urban folklore, talking about what happened in the North, in the urban North, after the Great Migration. So yeah, that's another phase I want to get into. Folklore of black folks, how it changed from when we were rural in the South during slavery and during Reconstruction and segregation, but then after the Great Migration, how our folklore changed. So I want to read that stuff and compare the two and stuff. And hopefully that will be better, because the collections of folklore of the Black American in the cities of the North and of the West also, those were more or less collected more by Black American, even though they were still published by white people and stuff. Hopefully, you get Black people collecting our own data. You'll get more of a authentic story, and you'll get less of the white folks lens, even though it'll come in because white folks own the publishing companies and we're the editors and stuff. So yeah, we'll see that. Like I said, I'm not giving up. If you want to read stuff, you can get this. You can get other collections. You can get the Southern Workman collection from Hampton University. There's tons of collections out there. They're rare, kind of hard to find. Luckily here in Chicago, we have a great public library. And I'm gonna read that stuff. I've started reading some of them, didn't finish them. Like there's a guy named Tally. He had something from 1922. A lot of folk songs were up in there, folk jokes. So yeah, even though I kind of was disappointed, I'm still going to continue on. I do love that, some of the stories were funny. I can see how also I can't give it to Brer Rabbit. A lot of times his stories were as him talking about how he was able to survive in a very deprived environment where there wasn't too much food or shelter, and how he had to try to take care of his family and protect his family. Like there's a story where I believe it's Brother Wolf is trying to, when Brer Rabbit is not around, he's trying to trick his baby bunnies, and he's trying to hurt them, maybe eat them, and Brer Rabbit has to come around and protect them. A lot of Black people, there was a lot of violence that was done against Black people during segregation, during slavery and segregation and post-segregation. So I kind of like that story as far as like fighting the power. I wish there would have been more stories like that where he was in trouble. Like I said, if his antagonist, like Brer Fox, Brer Bear, Brer Fox, Brer Bear, and what's the other one? Brer Fox, Brer Bear, and Brer Wolf. If they would have had them bullying him, that would have been great. Maybe I need to read, because I do know there are a couple of collections where they just have a big omnibus of his stuff, and if I read them, maybe there are stories where he is getting bullied and picked on, and he's fighting back by using his wit. I might get to him, I don't know. I barely got through this thing, and this was like 222 pages. It's a really short, thin book, but the dialect kind of slowed me down, so it was a sludge. It took me four times the time usually to read a short book like this because of the fucking dialect. If I get the omnibus collections of them, I probably will try to sludge through them and try to see if the dynamic changes. Instead of him being a scoundrel and a cheat and a con man, if you have more stuff of him being bullied and tricked, like with the turtle race and stuff, and him being injustice being done, maybe that'll be great. I don't know, I have to see, but yeah, I haven't given up. I'm still going to look for the folklore. And yes, I do recommend as a starting point. Yes, because like I said, his whole thing where he not only told stories of, Brer Rabbit, but also, like I said, it's kind of an overall kind of, greatest hits thing where he goes into plantation proverbs. So he gets some of the folk wisdom. He goes into the songs. You have church songs and secular songs. So you kind of get church, what's happening in church, and pop culture. And then his sayings, which are stories of him, the environment post Civil War. You kind of get a context there. This is, I ain't gonna lie, as an introduction, it's good. It's okay. But like I said, the other stuff that comes with it, take it with a grain of salt. Just get you a big old dump truck of salt and pour it onto it and stuff, so you can kind of get through it. But yeah, so I recommend it as a beginner. If you're interested in Black American folklore, this is a great beginning because it is presented all around. You know, if you can get through the dialect, it's kind of a sludge, do it. But yeah, as an introduction, it's a good thing. So yeah. So and the next folklore I'll be reading and stuff, I'll get that to you too. So especially John and Old Master. So coming up next. Okay, that's about it. See you later. See you next time.